Good afternoon and welcome to Breakup Bites. I'm Jennifer Barkin and here's my co-host, Jennifer Donison. Hi, Jen.
Hi, Jen. How's it going?
I'm okay. So today we're going to talk about how this economy, which is terrible and a lot of people are suffering, is affecting people who want to separate. So, without going into too much detail about the economy, I mean, you just have to go into your local grocery store and you can see that $100 is buying you a lot less than it was a couple of years ago. Groceries have skyrocketed. Everything is just so expensive.
Yeah,
So
it
where do
is.
we are couples?
Yeah, and it was hard enough, even without the economy being the situation it is, for people to actually make that plunge and decide to separate and move. Sometimes it's very difficult because people are concerned about their children and how that's going to break them apart and spending less time with them. So now with the economy being in the state it is, it's even more difficult because there's more issues on top that are compiling, and a lot of people just give in and decide to stay.
For sure. I mean, all you have to do is look at the average rent in Toronto for nothing.
Mhm.
You know, people just don't know how they're going to do it, right? It's not economically feasible to maintain, it was always, unless you were extremely wealthy, your lifestyle would change to an extent because it's a lot more money to run two households than it is one. But now, with the average rent being 2,400 or $2,500 a month, people are just finding that they're stuck and they can't leave. So it's a hard position to be in. And
Mhm.
what we're seeing is divorce rates actually going down right now. And I think it's pretty safe to say that the economy plays a big factor into that.
Absolutely, it does. And I think that one important thing to remember is that even if you can't split homes and go off and do something on your own, it's still important to establish boundaries and rules while living together in the home if you are going to be separate, living in the same home. And we've spoken about nesting before and things like that and arrangements that can be helpful. But this is also something where people sometimes feel the pressure because they just want to leave, but they can't. And it's going to be really important to establish those boundaries so that everyone understands what they can and can't do to make it a little bit easier for everybody that's living in the household, if possible.
Hmm. So, what we do know as professionals is we want the children not exposed to conflict, ideally, right? We know that the research shows that children who are not exposed to conflict when the parents separate, they fare much better in life, right? Um, the kids that don't do so well are the kids that are exposed to conflicts. Now, this becomes very difficult if you are living in the house with your spouse who you don't get along with, who you fight with all the time, who you don't respect, right? That tension is in the air. So, you brought up a very good point. Let's have some boundaries. So, one way of creating some boundaries is to work with a mediator and to create what we call an interim parenting plan. And in addition to the interim parenting plan, we can have an interim financial plan of what it's going to look like. So, from the parenting, right? What would an interim plan look like? So, maybe, Jen, if you and I were spouses, maybe you would be responsible to cook dinner Monday, Tuesday night and help the kids with the homework. And Wednesday, Thursday's mine, and we could rotate weekends. And maybe during my own parenting time and during your respective parenting time, both of us have let the non-parenting time parent leaves the house, goes out with a friend, goes to a relative's, wherever, to allow that one-on-one time, right? But to have some sort of schedule of what it's going to look like, because if we're no longer in the romantic or cohabitating or marriage relationship, it's now needing to move to a business relationship. So kids are the business. We want the business to thrive. We're the business partners. So we have to come up with a way that this is going to work.
One thing really important to remember, though, is that if you are going to be moving towards separation and there's going to be an argument around the date of separation, you have to be very careful in how you're proceeding with living together so you're not going to have any confusion around what that date of separation will be.
Good point. And the other thing is, um, you may want to get some legal advice about something called status quo. So status quo means, well, this is the way things have been going, so we should continue this way. So maybe some, how would this affect me? So before going to mediate an arrangement such as this, how would this affect me if I did A, B, C, D? But then again, I tend to recommend that two people before going to mediation of any kind. Not a bad idea to get some legal advice and the rights. Because as a mediator,
Absolutely. It's true. And I think that it's really also important to understand that everyone's situation is unique. And although maybe parents A and B have a separate basement that one parent can move into, there are smaller living arrangements that you may not be able to have your own space in. And it's
mhm,
going to be difficult to establish the same type of boundaries and situations. So everyone's situation is unique and really important to get some guidance and advice around what would be the best outcome and the best situation for what you're dealing with personally.
exactly. And finances are not can be finances. Say finances. Finances can be another bone of contention when people are trying to separate and they're living in the same house because who's paying for what? What should this look like? When people separate, the way things happened during the marriage was like a family system. And maybe you took out the garbage and I did the grocery shopping. We each had our roles. But now that we're really separate, uh, who's looking after what? And what is it going to look like? So it can be if there's a mortgage on this home that you're in, who pays it? Well, typically, if people are separated, and it doesn't matter whose name this matrimonial home is in, the home belongs to both people equally, 50-50. It doesn't matter who's on the mortgage, but you're both responsible to pay half the mortgage, for example. What's going to be with the groceries? Are we going to close some accounts and maybe have a family account that the groceries come out of and the utilities in the house? There's a lot of decisions to be made of what things are going to look like, but generally speaking, there's a few that are shared when people are separating, and it would be major repairs on a house. So it doesn't mean that my kitchen is so ugly, and it really is if you saw it. I can just change that. It means the water flooded from the bathroom. Um, that would be constitute a major repair, something like that. Sharing in the property taxes because with the can't even talk today. When it's a matrimonial home, it's both people's assets, so they share in that, and of course the mortgage. But
And
there's a bunch of other things that should be ironed out, right?
absolutely. And, we're assuming that the examples that we're giving are from a two income family home. Sometimes there's a stay at home parent who doesn't have an income and their sole responsibility is to care for the children. And that becomes a different type of financial situation that needs to be discussed and worked out. Because what happens when one person does not have an income and all the expenses still need to be shared? It becomes a little bit more tricky. So that's why legal advice and having a professional help with any type of situation you're going through is going to be pretty critical.
I agree.
So, COVID was another situation where everybody was still living together, even though they sometimes wanted to live apart. And it was very difficult. And, also rent and different things were sometimes unfeasible. But it was also the concern of bubbling and who are you going to see outside of the home? And if you want to stay in the home to ensure that nobody is going to spread germs to anyone else and all of those things. So it was difficult. And it's almost repeating itself in the way the economy is going now, where people still can't leave, except obviously it's not the same with their health concern, but it's still a difficult situation. There was a lot of abuse that occurred. It skyrocketed because people couldn't go
Hmm.
to each other. And my hope is that people who feel that they need to stay living together do establish these types of boundaries so that there is going to be less contention, less conflict. The children are still going to feel safe in their homes, and both parents can get a little bit of relief. It's the worst feeling in the world when you feel that the person that you're just and so much conflict with is coming home. And you know that you're going to be in the same household and you have to pretend everything is fine in front of your children. And it's something that your children can sense. You can't fake it that good. Even the best actors can't pretend that there's no tension even when there is. And you need to really figure out how you can separate that so that you're still bringing yourself in a happy place for your children's sake and your own, of course. So, how do you do that? How do you accomplish that really difficult goal when you're in a space where you're not feeling comfortable? You're feeling all of these difficult feelings, and you're just wanting to leave. Again, working with a professional can really help iron out all those details.
Exactly. Exactly. So Jennifer and I are both available if anybody has any questions, if you want to reach out, if you're contemplating separation and not figuring out or can't see how you're going to do it, please reach out to us. We are happy to help you. In the meantime, we thank you for joining us today. And until next time, I'm Jennifer Barkin.
And I'm Jennifer Dawn. Have a wonderful day.